She called the cops on a black schoolboy, then froze in shock when his mother showed up, wearing an FBI badge. It was a quiet afternoon in the suburbs. The kind of afternoon where everything felt still. The trees weren't moving, the air was soft, and the sun hung gently in the sky. School had just ended, and students from Jefferson Middle School were walking home in groups, pairs, or sometimes alone, their backpacks bouncing on their backs, and their minds already drifting away from lessons and toward snacks, video games, or cartoons. Malik Carter was one of those students. He was 12 years old in 7th grade and loved science and basketball in equal amounts. He was smart, curious, and polite, the kind of kid who always said thank you without being reminded. His teachers liked him, and so did most of the other kids. He didn't cause trouble, didn't talk back, and had a shy smile that made people feel calm around him. That day, Malik was walking home by himself. His usual walking partner, Jordan, had gone to the dentist. Malik didn't mind. He enjoyed walking alone sometimes. It gave him time to think about things, like the science project he wanted to start, or what kind of sneakers he'd ask for on his birthday. He took his normal route down Maple Street, past the old bakery, crossed the park with the rusty swing set, and then through a quiet row of houses. There was a short paved path between two homes that connected one street to another. It was like a shortcut, and many kids used it. It wasn't anyone's private property. It was public space, built by the city so kids and people could walk through without going around the block. Malik had walked through that path for weeks, maybe months. It was safe, fast, and saved him almost 10 minutes. But someone was watching that path from a window. Her name was Karen Dillard. She lived in one of the houses next to the path. Her house was always very clean and very quiet. She liked it that way. Karen had lived in that neighborhood for almost 10 years. She worked from home and spent a lot of time looking out her big front window. Some people thought she was a little nosy. Others said she was just careful. Karen liked to know who was walking near her house, who was delivering packages, and even who parked too close to her driveway. She didn't like surprises. She liked everything to stay, just the way it always was. That day, she saw Malik walking through the path. She had seen kids walk that way before, but something about Malik made her uncomfortable. Maybe it was because he was wearing a hoodie, even though it wasn't very cold. Maybe it was because he was walking alone. Maybe it was because he was black. She wouldn't admit that last part out loud, not even to herself, but it was there in the back of her mind. In the way she stared harder at him than she would at any white child doing the same thing. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. "There's a young man walking through the side path between houses," she said. "He looks suspicious. I don't know what he's doing." The dispatcher asked her to describe him. "He's a black male," Karen said, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Maybe 12 or 13, wearing a hoodie, walking slowly. I just don't know if he belongs here. Is he doing anything illegal?" the dispatcher asked. Karen paused. "No, but he looks like he might be up to something. It's better safe than sorry, right?" The dispatcher told her that officers would check it out. Malik, meanwhile, had no idea any of this was happening. He was listening to music through one earbud, humming a tune and thinking about the science experiment they'd started in class, something about magnets and electricity. He wasn't afraid, nervous, or suspicious. He didn't feel like he was being watched. He didn't know a stranger had judged him and reported him as suspicious just for walking. As he reached the end of the path and stepped back onto the sidewalk, he noticed a police cruiser turning onto the street. He didn't think it had anything to do with him. Why would it? He hadn't done anything wrong. He kept walking. The cruiser slowed down, and it pulled up beside him. 2 police officers stepped out. "Hey, kid," one of them called. "Can we talk to you for a second?" Malik stopped. He was confused. His heart started to beat a little faster. He'd never been stopped by the police before. His mom had told him what to do if it ever happened. Stay calm, don't run, don't argue, and be respectful. He remembered every word. "Okay," he said quietly. The officers approached him slowly. They looked him up and down, as if trying to figure out if he was dangerous or not. Malik looked back at them with wide, confused eyes. What's your name? The taller officer asked. Malik Carter. Where do you live? Over on Beechwood Drive. 2 blocks that way. You coming from school? Yes, sir. The shorter officer looked around. You walk through here often? Every day? Malik said. It's the shortest way home. The officers looked at each other. Behind them, a few neighbors had come outside. They noticed the police cruiser and the young boy being questioned. A couple of them pulled out their phones and started recording. They didn't know what was going on, but it didn't look right. Malik wasn't yelling. He wasn't running. He was just standing there, holding his backpack strapped tightly. Answering questions like someone in a job interview, one of the neighbors whispered to another, "Why are they bothering that boy?" Karen stood near her porch, pretending not to watch, but she was watching everything. She folded her arms and told herself she had done the right thing. She didn't want any trouble. In her neighborhood, do you have ID? One officer asked Malik. I'm 12, Malik said. I don't carry ID. Do you have someone we can call? Yes, he said. My mom. Can I call her now? The taller officer sighed and nodded. Malik reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His hands were a little shaky now. He found his mom's contact and pressed the call button. She answered on the second ring. Hey, baby, she said. You okay, Mom? Malik said softly. The police stopped me. They said someone called about me walking home. There was a pause. Put one of the officers on the phone, she said firmly. Malik handed the phone to the officer. Hello? The officer said. The voice on the other end was clear, calm, and serious. This is Special Agent Denise Carter, FBI. That's my son you're speaking to. The officer's face changed immediately. His eyebrows went up, and his tone became softer, more polite. Oh, yes, ma'am. Your son is fine. We just got a call from a neighbor who didn't recognize him and wanted us to check things out. I see, she said. Well, I'm on my way. Don't let my son out of your sight. Don't put a hand on him. No, ma'am. Absolutely not. Handed the phone back to Malik. She's coming, Malik told them. One of the neighbors filming whispered, Did he just say his mom's FBI? Karen's heart started racing. She had heard the conversation too. Her confident posture began to melt. She didn't know what to do now. She hadn't expected this. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the sidewalk. Denise Carter stepped out. She was wearing a navy blazer, black slacks, and a badge on her belt. She walked toward the officers with the kind of calm power that made people stand up straighter. She looked directly at Malik first. You okay? He nodded and blinked hard to stop himself from crying. She turned to the officers. Explain. And everything that happened next would become the talk of the neighborhood and the internet for weeks to come. But for Malik, it had already been too much. All he had done was walk home. He didn't break anything, steal anything, or bother anyone. Still, someone had looked at him and seen danger, and the most painful part. He was used to it. That was the day a simple walk home turned into something else. Something heavier. Something that would change everything. Not just for Malik, but for the woman who called, for the officers who responded, and for a neighborhood that had pretended for too long that it didn't have a problem. The street was quiet, but something didn't feel right. Malik stood on the sidewalk, feeling small under the eyes of the 2 police officers. His phone was now back in his pocket, and both officers were standing near him but not talking. The taller one was pacing slowly, as if thinking about something. The shorter one kept looking down the road, maybe waiting for Malik's mother to arrive. Everything felt strange to Malik, like the world had suddenly become unsure and dangerous. He kept thinking about what just happened. Why did they stop him? Why did the woman in the blue house call the police? He hadn't knocked on any doors, hadn't picked up anything, hadn't even looked at anyone. He had simply walked, and somehow walking made him look suspicious. Words stuck in his mind, suspicious. It felt like a knife word, sharp and cold. The crowd on the sidewalk was slowly growing. A few neighbors had come out of their homes to see what was going on. Some were quietly talking. Others just watched. A teenage girl on the porch across the street had been filming the whole time. She had seen enough stories online to know that having a video could matter. It could protect someone. Or expose someone. Karen, the woman who called the police, stood just a few feet away from her porch. She had her arms folded tightly across her chest. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't apologizing either. She kept whispering things like, "Was just being careful, and I didn't know who he was." She tried to sound calm, but her face was turning pale. Malik didn't look at her. He didn't want to. He felt like her eyes were still crawling on his skin. Even though she had stopped talking, her silence still said everything. Her message had already been sent to the police. "He doesn't belong here." The taller officer finally spoke again. "Malik, just stay right here until your mom arrives, okay?" Malik nodded. He didn't want to move anyway. The officer tried to sound friendly now. He wasn't smiling, but his voice had changed from the cold, suspicious tone he had earlier. "You go to Jefferson Middle, right?" "Yes," Malik said. "You like school?" "It's okay. What's your favorite subject?" "Science." The officer tried to chuckle. "You a Strata student or one of those troublemakers?" Malik didn't answer. That question didn't sound like a joke to him. "Why would he be a troublemaker? Just because he was black? Just because he was standing here?" The shorter officer interrupted. "Play sports." "Basketball," Malik answered. "And I like chess." "Chess." The taller officer seemed surprised. "You don't look like a chess player." Malik didn't respond again. He looked down at his shoes. He'd cleaned them just yesterday. They were bright white sneakers. His favorite pair. He felt like they didn't deserve to be standing in this mess. Then the black SUV turned onto the street. Everyone noticed it. The neighbors quieted down. Even Karen stopped whispering to herself. The SUV pulled up next to the police car, and the driver's side door opened. Out stepped Denise Carter, Malik's mother. She walked quickly, but not in a panic. Sharp, focused. She wasn't shouting. She didn't look scared. She looked like someone who had dealt with situations far more serious than this, and that's because she had. She walked straight to Malik, touched his face gently, and asked, "You okay, baby?" Malik nodded again, but she could see the fear in his eyes. She kissed the top of his head and then turned to the officers. Her voice changed. It was cool and controlled, but there was something under it, something strong. "I'm Special Agent Denise Carter, FBI. Now tell me, what exactly is going on here?" The taller officer straightened his back. "We received a call from a resident who said a suspicious male was walking through the path between houses. We just came to check it out." She raised an eyebrow, and the suspicious male turned out to be my 12-year-old son walking home from school. "Yes, ma'am," the officer said, now sounding unsure. "Did he run?" "No, ma'am." "Did he argue? Refuse to answer questions? Show any threat at all?" "No, ma'am." He was polite and cooperative. Denise looked around. "So what made you decide he was suspicious in the first place?" The officers exchanged a glance. Shorter one opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The taller one tried to explain again. Caller said she didn't recognize him. She thought he might be casing houses, looking around too much. Denise turned toward Karen. The woman tried to step back, but it was too late. "Are you the one who called?" Denise asked. Karen hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't mean anything by it," she said quickly. I saw someone I didn't." "No, and he looked like he was sneaking around." "Sneaking around?" Denise repeated, her voice sharper now. "You mean walking?" "Well, yes, but he was walking home from school," Denise said, "through a public sidewalk. Something people do every single day." Karen looked flustered. "I didn't know that. I've just never seen him before." "So your solution," Denise continued, "was to call the police on a child?" Karen's voice dropped. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," Denise said. "You saw a black child and assumed he was a threat. You didn't stop to ask who he was. You didn't look to see if he was scared. You picked up the phone and invited danger into his life just because he made you uncomfortable?" The crowd was now silent. Everyone was watching. A few people nodded. Others looked embarrassed. Karen didn't say anything. She just stood there, her mouth half open. Denise turned back to the officers. "You've identified that there was no crime, no reason to detain him, and no threat. Are we done here?" The taller officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Sorry for the inconvenience. Inconvenience, Denise repeated. You think this is just an inconvenience? My son will remember this forever? He'll remember the day he was walking home and someone decided he looked like a criminal? He'll remember the flashing lights, the questions, and the fear. That's not an inconvenience. It's trauma. The officers had no answer. Malik, still quiet, looked up at his mother with wide eyes. He had never seen her like this. She was always strong, but this was different. She wasn't just protecting him. She was standing up to something much bigger. Let's go, she said gently, putting an arm around his shoulder. They walked back to the SUV together. The door closed. The engine started. As they pulled away, Malik looked out the window and saw Karen still standing there. She didn't look proud anymore. She looked frozen. Back in the car, Malik leaned against the seat. He didn't speak for a while. His mom drove in silence, letting him think. Finally, he whispered, "Why did she do that, Mom?" Denise took a deep breath. Because some people are scared of things they don't understand. And sometimes, instead of learning, they just react. Did I do something wrong? No. Baby, you did everything right. You were calm. You were respectful. You told the truth. You were perfect. But it still happened. Yes, she said. And that's the hard part. Sometimes doing everything right isn't enough. That's why people like me fight for change. Malik nodded slowly. He didn't say anything more, but his eyes were full of thoughts, heavy thoughts. More than a 12-year-old should have to carry. That night, Denise sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She wasn't planning to post anything online. She didn't need attention, but she did type out what happened. Just for herself, reminder. She knew this wouldn't be the last time her son would face something like this. But maybe, just maybe, if people heard about it, if they saw it for what it was, they might start asking themselves better questions. Like why a child walking home needed to be feared? Or why a woman thought the police were the right answer to her discomfort? Or why a boy who loved science and chess had to stand on a sidewalk afraid for his life? While others just watched, and maybe if people asked enough of those questions, things would begin to change. The next morning, Malik didn't want to get out of bed. The sunlight was slipping through the curtains, birds were chirping, and the house smelled like toast and eggs. But none of that felt good. He lay on his side, eyes open, staring at the wall. His mind was full of thoughts that didn't belong to someone his age. His mother knocked gently on his door. "Malik," she said softly, "you okay in there?" He didn't answer at first. Then, after a long pause, he said, "I don't want to go to school." Denise opened the door and came in. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her son. He wasn't crying, but she could see the weight in his eyes. It was the look of someone trying to understand why the world felt unfair. "You don't have to go if you're not ready," she said. "We can take the day off." "But I didn't do anything wrong," he said, still looking at the wall. "No, you didn't, so why do I feel like I did?" She placed her hand gently on his back. "Because when people treat you like a problem, even when you're not one, it makes you question yourself. That's not your fault. That's their fault." Malik sat up slowly and rubbed his face. "Will it happen again?" Denise didn't answer right away. She didn't want to lie. Finally, she said, "I hope not, but if it does, you'll know how to handle it. You've handled yourself better than most grown-ups could." Malik nodded. "Did everyone see the video?" "A lot of people did," she said. "It's been shared online. Some neighbors posted it. Some are defending you. Some are angry at the woman who called the police," Malik said. "That was her name?" "Yes." "What's going to happen to her?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe she'll feel ashamed. Maybe she'll learn something. She didn't even say sorry." "I know." Malik got up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the quiet street, the trees, the sidewalk, the same sidewalk where the police had stopped him. It looked normal again, but he didn't feel normal. Down the street, a few kids were walking to school, recognized them from his grade. They didn't know what had happened. Or maybe they did. He didn't know which was worse. "I want to go," he said finally. "I want to go to school. You sure?" "Yeah." "If I stay home, it's like I did something wrong." "I didn't." Denise smiled gently. That's my boy. She drove him to school that day. Usually he walked, but she didn't want him to feel nervous. Not today. As they drove, she noticed the way he kept looking out the window like he was checking to see if someone was watching. At school, the halls were buzzing like always. Kids were chatting, lockers were slamming, and teachers were calling out instructions. But something felt different. When Malik walked in, a few students looked at him longer than usual. One kid whispered something to another and pointed. Malik didn't like the attention, kept walking. In his classroom, his science teacher, Mr. Lopez, greeted him warmly. "Hey Malik, good to see you, buddy. Missed you yesterday." Malik nodded and gave a small smile. Mr. Lopez didn't mention anything about the video, but Malik could tell that he knew. At lunch, Malik sat at his usual table. A couple of his close friends sat with him, Jordan, who had missed school the day before, and Ryan, who always brought an extra cookie to share. "Man," Jordan said, lowering his voice. "Was that really you in the video?" Malik nodded. "Double quotes, dude. Ryan said my mom saw it on Facebook. She was so mad. She said that lady should be arrested." Malik shrugged. "She won't be." "I don't get it," Jordan said. "You were just walking." "I know." A while, they sat in silence, chewing their sandwiches, thinking. Then Ryan said, "If that was me, they wouldn't have done anything." Malik looked up. "Probably not." Jordan nodded slowly. "Yeah. They wouldn't have called the cops." On me, that quiet truth settled over the table. None of them had to say why. They all knew. After school, Denise picked Malik up again. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Malik asked, "Mom, can I do something?" "What is it?" "I want to speak at school, like an assembly. I want to tell people what happened." Denise looked over at him. "Are you sure?" "That's a big step. I don't want people to just see the video and forget about it. I want them to understand." Denise nodded, proud. "Then we'll make it happen." The next day, Denise contacted the school principal. His name was Mr. O'Neill, a tall man with glasses and a kind face. He had already heard about the incident and had been worried about Malik. When Denise explained that Malik wanted to speak at the school assembly, Mr. O'Neill was impressed. "That's a very brave thing," he said. "Most kids would want to hide, but Malik wants to teach." The assembly was scheduled for Friday morning. All students from grades 6 through 8 would be there. The gym would be full, and the microphone would be loud. Malik had never spoken in front of so many people before, but he wasn't nervous. He felt something new inside him, something strong. That week, Malik worked with his mother to write what he wanted to say. They practiced at home, standing in the living room with Denise pretending to be the crowd. Malik kept it simple. He didn't want to blame. He didn't want to yell. He just wanted to explain how it felt. Friday came quickly. The gym was packed. Teachers stood on the sides. Kids sat cross-legged on the floor. A microphone was placed at the center. Mr. O'Neill walked up first and tapped it gently. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Before we start today's assembly, we have a special message. One of our students, Malik Carter, would like to speak. Please give him your attention and respect." Malik walked up to the microphone. He was wearing a blue shirt and clean jeans. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady. "Hi," he began. "My name is Malik. I'm in 7th grade. Some of you might have seen a video going around. In it, I'm standing on a sidewalk with 2 police officers. That video is real. It happened last week." He paused. The gym was quiet. I was walking home from school like I do every day. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't running, yelling, or acting weird. I was just walking. But someone saw me and thought I looked suspicious, so they called the police. Some kids whispered. Others stared. When the police came, they asked me questions. I answered them. I didn't argue, but I was scared. Really scared. Because even though I did nothing wrong, I felt like I could still get in trouble. Or worse. He looked around the room. Some teachers had tears in their eyes. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because it could happen again. It's not just to me, but to any kid who looks like me." People make judgments. They look at skin color, clothes, and forget that we're just kids, students, humans. Want us to be better? I want us to notice things, but also question ourselves. Before we call someone suspicious, ask why. Before we jump to fear, ask who are they really? Because we're not strangers. We're classmates. Neighbors. Friends. There was silence. Then, slowly, applause began. A few students clapped, then more. Soon, the whole gym was filled with the sound of clapping and cheering. Mr. O'Neill stepped forward and placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "Thank you," he said simply. After the assembly, students came up to Malik. Some said they were proud of him, some said they were sorry. Even kids he barely knew gave him high fives or hugs. That day, Malik felt something new. He felt seen. But it wasn't just the school that changed. In the neighborhood, people started talking. Conversations happened between families, at dinner tables, in backyards, and over fences. Parents asked their children, "Do you know Malik?" Neighbors asked each other, "Why did she call the police on him?" Some defended Karen. She was just being careful. Others disagreed. Careful doesn't mean calling the cops on a child. Karen, for her part, stayed quiet for days. She didn't go outside much. Her curtains stayed closed. But the whispers didn't stop. People had seen the video. They'd seen how Denise handled it. Most of them agreed Karen was wrong. One evening, 3 days after the assembly, someone rang Malik's doorbell. Denise opened the door. Karen stood there, holding a small card in her hands. "I came to apologize," she said. "To you and your son." Denise didn't say anything. She waited. Karen looked down, ashamed. "I made a mistake. A big one. I judged a child I didn't know. I let fear take over. I see that now, and I'm sorry." "Are you sorry because people are upset?" Denise asked. "Or because you finally understand?" Karen swallowed hard. "Both," she said honestly. Denise took the card, but she didn't invite her in. "I hope you mean it, and I hope you do better." Karen nodded, then turned and walked away. Malik watched from the window. Didn't feel happy, but he didn't feel angry either. Just felt tired, and a little more grown up than before. That night, he sat at the table with his mother. They didn't talk much, but something had changed. Malik wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a voice, a lesson, a story people were starting to listen to, and that was only the beginning. Days passed, and the incident that once seemed like a quiet moment on a suburban sidewalk had now grown into something much bigger. Malik's speech at school was shared on social media. Someone had recorded it on their phone and posted it online. Within hours, it was being shared by thousands of people, not just from the neighborhood, but from different parts of the city, even different states. People were talking about Malik, the young boy who stayed calm in a scary moment and spoke with so much wisdom. Denise watched the video again late at night, sitting on her couch with a cup of tea. She couldn't believe how calm her son had been, how strong his words were. She had spent her whole life dealing with racism and suspicion. She had gone through the FBI academy, passed tests, faced judgments, and proved herself again and again. But her son, only 13, had already been thrown into that world in a way no child should ever have to face. And yet, he had stood tall. People began to reach out. Journalists called, asking for interviews. Local radio stations wanted Malik to come on and talk. A few civil rights groups contacted Denise, praising how she and her son had handled the situation. Some offered to support Malik in the future mentorships, scholarships, summer programs. Denise was careful. She didn't want her son to be turned into a symbol or used for clicks. She spoke with Malik, explaining everything. He listened quietly, then simply said, "I just wanted people to understand, not to become famous." The principal, Mr. O'Neill, invited Denise to speak with the school board. They wanted to create a new lesson plan around bias and awareness. Denise agreed. If this could help other kids not go through what Malik went through, it would be worth it. Meanwhile, the neighborhood continued to buzz. Some families talked about what had happened and tried to learn from it. Others avoided the topic altogether, pretending like nothing had changed. Karen, the woman who had called the police, stayed inside most days. Her house, once known for its neat lawn and flower beds, now looked a little lonely. One Saturday morning, Malik and Denise went to the local park. It was sunny, the air warm, the trees full of green leaves. Children were playing, dogs were being walked, and families were sitting on picnic blankets. It seemed peaceful again. But Malik noticed something. People were noticing him. A few adults came over to say they admired his courage. Some parents introduced their children to him, saying, "This is the boy I told you about." Malik shook their hands politely, but didn't say much. It still felt strange. Later, a boy around Malik's age approached him near the basketball court. He had red hair and freckles, and Malik recognized him from school, but didn't know his name. "Hey," the boy said awkwardly. "I just wanted to say, sorry I didn't really get what the big deal was before. But I saw the video. I saw what you said. I get it now, I think." Malik looked at him, then nodded. "Thanks," he said. "You want to shoot hoops?" the boy asked. Malik smiled a little. "Sure." He played for a while, not saying much, just passing the ball back and forth, jumping, laughing. And for a while, Malik felt like a normal kid again. But the peace didn't last forever. One evening, Denise got a letter in the mail from a local neighborhood group. It was polite on the surface, but its message was clear. Some people in the area were unhappy about all the attention. They didn't like the negative light being placed on their neighborhood. They felt the situation was being exaggerated. Denise read the letter twice, then showed it to Malik. He read it silently, then put it down. "They don't want to believe it happened," he said. "No," Denise replied. "They'd rather pretend this place is perfect, but it's not." "No." "Place is?" Malik looked at his mother. "Should we move?" Denise took a deep breath. "Do you want to?" He thought about it. "Part of me does. But part of me wants to stay, to show them I'm not going anywhere." Denise smiled. That's strength. The decision wasn't simple. As more attention came to their story, more people voiced opinions. Some were kind, others were angry. One day, someone even left a nasty note on their car windshield. It wasn't a direct threat, but it was ugly. Denise reported it, of course. But it reminded her that not everyone wanted change. The FBI had taken an interest in the case. Officially, but as a matter of concern. Denise's supervisors contacted her, checking on her and Malik. One of them, senior agent named Carter, who had mentored Denise when she was younger, called her personally. "You've handled this like a pro," Agent Carter said. "We're proud of you." "I wish I didn't have to," Denise replied. "I know." A few weeks later, the school invited parents to attend a special evening session on race, safety, and community. Denise was asked to speak again, this time in front of adults, parents, teachers, staff. The gym was filled with folding chairs, coffee cups, and quiet tension. Denise stood at the front, holding a microphone. She looked at the rows of faces, some supportive, some cautious, some defensive. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. She just told the story, simply and clearly. About Malik, about the sidewalk, about the phone call, and about what happened afterward. She spoke as a mother, as a neighbor, and as an FBI agent. "I'm not here to shame anyone," she said. "I'm here to ask something simple. Look around. Who do you notice? Who do you fear? And why?" When she finished, the room was quiet. Some people clapped, some didn't. But all of them heard her. Afterward, one man came up to her. He was tall, wore a suit, and had a tight smile. He spoke. "Well," he said, "but I still think you're making too much out of one mistake." Denise looked at him calmly. "One mistake can change a child's life." He didn't have a reply to that. That night, Malik watched from the hallway as his mother spoke. He felt proud. Not just because she was his mom, but because she didn't back down. Not in her job, not in her life, and not now. He wanted to be like that. At school, things slowly began to settle. The whispers stopped. Teachers talked more openly about inclusion and fairness. Some classes even used Malik's speech in writing lessons. asking students to write about their own experiences or thoughts on justice. One teacher, Ms. Garcia, who taught literature, gave the class an assignment. Write a letter to your future self. What do you want to remember about this year? Malik wrote. I want to remember that people can change, but only if we help them see why they should. I want to remember that I was scared, but I spoke anyway. And I want to remember that being kind is not the same as being silent. Ms. Garcia gave him an A+. One day, as spring turned to summer, the mayor of the city invited Malik and Denise to a town hall meeting. They were given a small award for courage and community leadership. It wasn't a fancy event, just a short speech and a handshake, but it mattered. It's not because of the attention, but because it showed that truth. Spoken by a young boy, had reached the ears of those in power. Karen, meanwhile, finally began to show signs of real change. She joined a diversity training group and began attending workshops on racial bias. She still kept a low profile, but a few neighbors noticed she had stopped acting as she once had. She no longer watched people out her window with suspicion. She smiled more, said hello. It wasn't a perfect fix. Malik hadn't forgotten what she did, but people grow. Sometimes slowly, and growth was better than silence. Denise often thought about what would have happened if she hadn't been in the FBI. What if she had been someone without authority, without connections, without a badge? Would the police have listened? Would people have believed her? She knew the answer. That's why she kept working. She gave talks at schools. She helped organize a city youth police discussion group. And she helped Malik prepare for a summer program in Washington, D.C., for young students interested in justice and leadership. Malik had grown in many ways. He wasn't just taller or older. He was wiser, stronger. He understood the world differently now. Not just as a boy who had been stopped on a sidewalk, but as someone who had learned to turn fear into purpose. He and Denise often sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun go down. One night, Malik asked, "Do you think things will ever really change?" Denise thought for a moment. Not all at once. But every voice, every action, every small step, they add up. And mine was one of those steps? She looked at him with pride. One of the biggest. They sat there quietly, the breeze warm against their faces, knowing that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but it would be theirs. And they would keep walking it together. Months had passed since that shocking day in the park when Malik sat on the bench, scared and confused, while a stranger shouted at him, and a police officer gripped his shoulders. That moment had changed everything. It had shaken not just his world, but the entire neighborhood. His mother, Denise, had walked in wearing her FBI vest, turning silence into power. Since that day, Malik had grown not just in age, but in mind, heart, and courage. The school year was ending. Summer was near, the air was warmer, the days longer. Malik had been accepted into a prestigious summer leadership program in Washington, D.C. It was designed for young people who had shown potential in activism, leadership, and public service. Denise was proud beyond words. She had always known. Her son was special, but now others were starting to see it too. The program would last for weeks. Malik would stay in a dorm with other students from across the country. They would visit museums, meet public officials, learn about justice, and work on projects together. It was exciting and a little scary. Malik had never been away from home that long. Denise helped him pack, but she also talked to him about the world he was stepping into. There will be people who don't know your story, she said. Some will judge you without asking. Others will respect you before even knowing you. But you don't have to prove anything. Just be you. It's always enough. When they arrived at the university campus, Malik was nervous, but tried not to show it. Denise hugged him tight and whispered, "Go lead." He nodded, held his bag tighter, and walked into the dorm with a brave smile. The first few days of the program were full of introductions and new friendships. Malik met kids from different backgrounds, city kids, small-town kids, kids who had also faced racism, poverty, family loss, and bullying. But there were also kids who had lived easy lives, never had to think twice when walking home or entering a store. One evening, the group was having a discussion about bias. A girl named Ava, from a wealthy family in Connecticut, asked, "Do you think people make things worse by talking too much about race?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Malik. He didn't speak right away. He looked down for a second, then slowly lifted his eyes and said, "Talking about something isn't what causes the problem. Pretending it doesn't exist does. The only reason people even know who I am is because someone thought I didn't belong on a bench in my own neighborhood." A boy from Chicago clapped. Others nodded. Malik had spoken with quiet power again. Throughout the program, Malik found his voice more and more. He led a small group in designing a campaign called Look Again, which encouraged people to challenge their first impressions. He created posters, social media messages, and a short video that used real stories, including Malik's, to show how bias works silently but powerfully. One evening, after a workshop, Malik sat outside looking at the stars. Another student, Jamal, joined him. They didn't talk much at first, just sat side by side in the warm night air. "You ever feel tired of always having to explain?" Jamal asked. "All the time," Malik replied. "But we still do it." "Yeah," Malik said. "Because if we don't, who will?" That became a bond between them, shared understanding, quiet strength. They talked about what they wanted to be when they grew up. Malik said maybe a civil rights lawyer, or maybe he'd follow his mom into law enforcement. Jamal wanted to write, to tell stories that would make people think. "You're already doing that," Malik said. "Every time you speak, you make people listen." Back home, Denise missed her son, but she kept busy. She gave talks at schools, trained new agents on bias and community relations, and stayed in touch with the principal about school policy changes. The neighborhood had quieted down, but something had shifted. People were more careful with their words, more thoughtful with their actions. Even Karen, the woman who had started it all, had joined a community discussion group. She had apologized publicly not just to Malik, but to other families she had treated with suspicion. It didn't erase what she did, but it was a step forward. When Malik returned from D.C., he was different. Taller, sure, but also more confident. He spoke with clarity, stood straighter, and smiled more. He wasn't just the boy who had once been shouted at on a bench. He was the young man who had faced something ugly and turned it into something powerful. Denise picked him up from the airport. He carried his own bag, his shoulders strong. Soon as he saw her, he broke into a wide grin and hugged her hard. "I missed you," he said. "I missed you too, leader." They drove home, and Malik told her about the program the kids he met, the speeches he gave, the project they built. He told her about Ava and Jamal and the long talks under the stars. He even showed her a pin he was awarded for transformative leadership. That evening, the two of them sat on the porch again, just like they used to. Soft breeze blew through the trees, and the air smelled like summer.
Denise
Asked him how he felt. "Ready," he said. "For what?" "For whatever comes next." Next school year brought new challenges, but Malik was ready. He was asked to lead a student council project on inclusion. He organized a youth town hall meeting where students could speak about issues they cared about. Some talked about race, others about mental health, bullying, or family struggles. Malik listened to them all and made sure every voice was heard. He was no longer the boy from the bench. He was Malik, the leader, the listener, the bridge between silence and truth. One day the mayor visited the school. She had heard about Malik's efforts and wanted to see the changes for herself. She asked him what he hoped the future would look like. "I want people to stop being afraid of each other," he said. "I want kids like me to sit on benches without being questioned. I want parents to teach their children not to judge so quickly. I want my story to be the last one like this." The mayor shook his hand. "Then you're already helping shape that future." The story even reached the attention of a documentary filmmaker who was working on a series about youth leadership. He asked Malik and Denise if he could include their story. At first, they hesitated. They had already shared so much. But after talking it through, they agreed. Not for attention, but for impact. The documentary was released online and shown in classrooms and community centers. Malik's part wasn't the longest, but it was the one people remembered. His calm voice, his firm words, his quiet strength. It inspired others to speak up about what they had experienced. It helped kids in other cities feel less alone. Years later, Malik would look back at that day in the park not with anger, but with understanding. It was the day the world tried to shrink him into a box, and he broke free. It was the day his mother reminded everyone that justice wears many faces. It was the day pain turned into purpose. He would go on to study law, just like he once dreamed. Would work in civil rights, standing beside people who needed a voice. And every time he walked into a courtroom, sat on a panel, or visited a school to talk to young people, he carried with him the memory of that moment, the bench, the anger, the fear, and the choice he made to rise above it. Denise watched her son grow into the man she had always hoped he'd become. Not perfect, not untouched by struggle, but brave, wise, kind. And every time someone asked him, "What made you who you are?" he would smile and say, "A woman shouted at me once, said I didn't belong. But my mother showed up and proved I did."